Say one more word about her body, and this room loses more than its music. The sentence had not been spoken yet, but it was already waiting in the silence of the Moretti mansion, hanging above the crystal chandeliers like a loaded secret. Eliana Rose stood near the champagne tower with a silver tray trembling in her hands, trying not to look at the 100 rich faces pretending not to stare. She was 27, a plus-size maid in a black uniform that had been ordered one size too small by a house manager who liked reminding her she did not belong among marble floors, imported roses, and women who laughed behind diamond-covered fingers. Her feet ached after 8 straight hours. Her curls were pinned too tightly, and under the white apron she had hidden the overdue hospital bill for her little brother, because fear had become something she carried close to her heart. Still, when an elderly guest dropped her cane near the stairs, Eliana was the only one who rushed forward, setting down the tray and steadying the woman before she fell. That small act should have been forgotten. Instead, Vanessa Vale saw it. Vanessa, the tall socialite everyone expected Dante Moretti to marry for business, smiled like a knife and lifted her voice over the string quartet. "Careful, sweetheart. With hips like that, you might knock over the whole mansion." Laughter cracked across the ballroom. Eliana froze, one hand still supporting the elderly woman, her cheeks burning hotter than the candles lining the walls. Someone whispered that the help should stay invisible. Someone else said the uniform looked like it was fighting for its life. Eliana lowered her eyes because she had learned that answering cruelty only gave it sharper teeth. She had been mocked by classmates, rejected by men who called themselves honest, and overlooked by employers who saw her body before they saw her work. But tonight felt worse because every laugh landed in public, polished and expensive, while she stood alone beneath it. Then Vanessa stepped closer, took a glass of red wine from a passing tray, and tipped it deliberately onto Eliana's apron. Gasps rose, but no one moved. The stain spread across the white fabric like a wound. "Now you match the carpet," Vanessa said. Eliana swallowed hard. She wanted to disappear, but the elderly woman squeezed her hand and whispered, "Don't let them make you small." Across the room, behind a wall of men in black suits, Dante Moretti had stopped speaking. He was the Mafia Boss of New York's most feared family, 36, wealthy enough to buy the building, and dangerous enough to make senators lower their voices. Men did not interrupt Dante. Enemies did not threaten him twice. Allies respected him because his control was colder than any weapon. Yet tonight, in his own mansion, he looked less like a host and more like a man carved from grief, haunted by betrayals that had taught him never to trust softness. His dark suit fit like armor. His eyes, usually empty and unreadable, fixed on the maid no one else considered worth defending. He had noticed her before the insult, not because of the dress size the room mocked, but because she had moved toward danger when everyone else moved toward comfort. She had protected an old woman without asking who was watching. She had taken humiliation without becoming cruel. That kind of strength was rare in his world, and rare things always caught Dante Moretti's attention. Eliana bent to pick up the fallen napkins near Vanessa's heels, desperate to finish the shift without crying. Vanessa placed one silver heel on the edge of the cloth, trapping it. "Crawl a little lower," she murmured. "Maybe then you will remember your place." The laughter came again, smaller this time, nervous around the edges. Then the music stopped. Not faded. Stopped. Every violinist lowered their bow as if an invisible hand had cut the sound in half. Eliana looked up and saw the crowd parting. Dante Moretti walked toward her slowly, each step turning the ballroom colder. His bodyguards stayed back. He did not need them. Vanessa's smile faltered for the first time. Dante reached Eliana, removed a folded white handkerchief from his jacket and offered it to her, not the wine-stained apron, not the floor, her face. "Your name?" he said, his voice low enough for her but sharp enough for the room. Eliana's lips trembled. "Eliana Rose, sir." Dante's gaze lifted to Vanessa, then to every guest who had laughed. "Use it with respect." Vanessa gave a brittle laugh. "Dante, honestly, she's just the maid." The room seemed to stop breathing. Dante stepped beside Eliana, close enough that his shadow covered the stain on her apron, and said the sentence that shattered every glassy smile in the mansion. "No, she is my wife." Dante Moretti's words did not echo. They landed, no. She is my wife." The ballroom froze so completely that Eliana could hear the soft drip of wine falling from her apron onto the marble floor. Her wife? The phrase struck her harder than Vanessa's insult, because Eliana had never seen Dante Moretti before tonight, except in newspaper photos and whispered warnings, and men like him did not claim maids in front of governors, bankers, and killers unless the claim meant danger. Vanessa's face went pale beneath her perfect makeup. "That is not funny," she said, trying to laugh, but her voice cracked. Dante did not look amused. He lifted one hand, and every server, musician, and guard stood still as if the entire mansion had been built around his command. "Did I sound like a man telling a joke?" he asked. No one answered. The house manager, Mr. Bell, hurried forward with a panic-red face. "Mr. Moretti, there must be some misunderstanding. The girl has caused a scene, and I can have her removed immediately." Dante turned his eyes on him. "The girl has a name." Mr. Bell swallowed. "Eliana Rose." "Again," Dante said, with respect. "Miss Rose," the manager whispered. Dante glanced at Eliana, and for one strange second the coldness in his face softened, not enough for the room to see, but enough for her to feel less alone. He took off his black suit jacket and placed it gently over her shoulders, covering the wine stain without touching her like she was a thing to be handled. The jacket was warm, heavy, and smelled faintly of cedar and smoke. Eliana clutched it closed with both hands, confused, embarrassed, and terrified of the eyes now fixed on her for a different reason. "Sir," she whispered, "I do not know what you are doing. Saving you from people who mistook silence for permission," Dante said quietly. Then he faced the crowd. "The Moretti Foundation gala is over." A wave of shock moved through the room. A silver-haired investor stepped forward. "Dante, we have a hospital wing contract waiting to be signed tonight." Dante's gaze sharpened. "Then you should have chosen better company before laughing at the woman who helped my mother stand." Eliana turned toward the elderly guest she had steadied near the stairs. The woman lifted her chin, her elegant eyes bright with anger and tenderness. "Thank you, child," she said. "Most people here saw an old woman falling and worried about spilling champagne. You saw a person." Eliana's throat tightened. She had not known the woman was Isabella Moretti, Dante's mother, the one person in New York no enemy dared approach. Vanessa snapped her clutch shut. "This is absurd. You would throw away a $10 million alliance over a maid?" Dante stepped closer to Vanessa, not raising his voice, which somehow made him more frightening. "No, I am throwing it away over disrespect." He turned to one of his men. "Every donation made tonight will be returned. Every guest who laughed will leave without a car from my garage, without a favor from my family, and without the illusion that cruelty is elegant." Chairs scraped. People lowered their eyes. Vanessa looked at Eliana with pure hatred, but Dante noticed and moved half a step in front of her. It was not dramatic. It was instinct. Eliana saw it, and that scared her more than the insult, because she had spent her life protecting herself, and now the most dangerous man in the city was protecting her like it cost him nothing. When the ballroom began to empty, Eliana tried to slip the jacket from her shoulders. "I cannot keep this." Dante's eyes dropped to her shaking hands. "You can until you stop trembling. You told them I was your wife." "I know. That is a lie." His jaw tightened. "For now, it is protection." The words were cold, but his voice was careful. Eliana stepped back. "Protection from them, or from you?" For the first time all night, Dante looked almost wounded, as if the question had found something under his armor. Before he could answer, Isabella Moretti touched Eliana's arm. "Trust is not owed, Dante, it is earned." Eliana blinked, surprised by the older woman's defense. Dante gave one slow nod. "Then I will earn it." A sharp crash cut through the hallway. One of Dante's guards rushed in holding Eliana's purse and a folded note found inside it. "Boss, this was planted in her locker." Dante opened it. His face turned colder than the marble beneath their feet. Eliana saw only 6 words written in black ink before he folded it away. "Pay your brother's debt by midnight." Dante looked at her, and the silence between them changed from scandal to threat. "Eliana," he said softly, "who is hunting you?" Eliana stared at the note in Dante's hand as if the ink could crawl off the paper and wrap around her throat. "Pay your brother's debt by midnight." The mansion hallway, moments ago filled with perfume and gossip, suddenly felt too narrow, too bright, too dangerous. No one is hunting me, she whispered, but the lie sounded weak even to her. Dante's eyes did not leave her face. People who are safe do not hide hospital bills in their apron. Eliana's breath caught. She had forgotten the folded envelope tucked beneath the stained fabric, the one that said her younger brother Matteo needed another surgery before the end of the month. Shame rose fast and hot. You had no right to look. I did not, Dante said, but someone else did. His guard placed a small plastic bag on the side table. Inside was a locker key, bent at the edge, and a photo of Eliana leaving Mercy General Hospital with Matteo in a wheelchair. Her knees nearly gave out. Dante stepped closer but did not grab her. He only held out his hand, steady and open, giving her the choice to take it. She did not, but she did not move away either. "Who gave you the debt?" he asked. Eliana looked toward the empty ballroom doors, where Vanessa Vale stood pretending to check her phone while listening to every word. "My stepfather borrowed money from a man named Carter Rusk," Eliana said. "He disappeared, and Rusk decided the debt belonged to me. I have been paying what I can." Dante's expression changed at the name, not with surprise but recognition. "Rusk works for the Vale family." Vanessa's head snapped up. "That is a disgusting accusation." Dante turned slowly. "Then you will not mind if I ask why your driver was seen outside Mercy General this morning?" Vanessa's perfect mask cracked for half a second. "I donate to that hospital." Isabella Moretti, still standing with her cane beside Eliana, gave a dry, elegant laugh. "You donate cameras to hallways and call it charity?" Eliana looked between them, confused, until Dante's guard passed him a phone. A grainy security image showed Vanessa's driver handing an envelope to Mr. Bell, the house manager, beside the servants' entrance. Mr. Bell backed away, sweat shining on his upper lip. "I can explain." "You can," Dante said, "but not here." The quiet threat in his voice made the man go silent. Eliana felt the room spinning, the wine, the laughter, the note, the purse in her locker. None of it had been random. "Why would you do this to me?" she asked Vanessa, and her voice broke in a way she hated. Vanessa smiled again, but now it looked desperate. "Because women like you do not get chosen in rooms like this. You are supposed to clean the floor, not stand beside him." Eliana flinched, not because the words were new, but because they were familiar enough to hurt. Dante moved before anyone else could breathe, placing himself between Vanessa and Eliana so completely that Vanessa had to look around his shoulder to see her. "She is standing beside me because she earned respect before you ever bought a gown." Vanessa's eyes filled with rage. "You need my family's shipping routes. Without my father, your East Coast contracts collapse." "Then they collapse," Dante said. The words were simple, final, and they shook the hallway more than a shout would have. Eliana looked at him, stunned. "Do not do that because of me." Dante turned, his voice lowering. "I am not doing it because you are helpless. I am doing it because you are being framed." Before she could answer, 2 police officers entered through the front doors, with Mr. Bell rushing behind them, pointing at Eliana. "That is her. She stole a diamond bracelet from Miss Vale's suite." A black velvet box appeared in one officer's hand. Inside glittered a bracelet Eliana had never seen. The hallway erupted in whispers. Vanessa pressed a hand to her heart, playing Wounded Beauty for an audience that had already practiced believing her. "I did not steal anything," Eliana said, but her voice shook. Dante's eyes hardened. "Where was it found?" Mr. Bell lifted his chin. "In her locker." Eliana went cold. The same locker where the note had been planted, the same locker someone had opened with a bent key. Dante looked at the officer, then at Vanessa, then at the house manager, who suddenly could not meet his eyes. For 1 second, Eliana thought he might doubt her, and the fear of that hurt worse than the accusation. But Dante stepped to her side instead of away from her. He took her trembling hand in front of everyone, not as a performance now, but as a promise. "No one takes her anywhere until I see the security footage." The lights flickered. From somewhere deeper in the mansion, a screen came alive with a message in bold white letters. "Give us the maid, or your mother does not survive midnight." The message burned across the mansion screen so brightly that every face in the hallway turned ghost white. "Give us the maid, or your mother does not survive midnight." Eliana felt Dante's hand tighten around hers, not painfully, but with the kind of control a man used when the world inside him was starting to crack. Isabella Moretti stood very still beside her cane, her proud chin lifted, but Eliana saw what everyone else missed: the faint grey around the older woman's lips, the thin shine of sweat beneath her pearls, the small tremor in her fingers. "Mrs. Moretti," Eliana whispered, stepping toward her. "Have you eaten or drunk anything in the last hour?" Vanessa laughed sharply. "Now the maid is a doctor too?" Eliana ignored her. For years she had sat in hospital rooms with Matteo, learning the difference between fear and warning signs, because poor families did not get the luxury of looking away. Isabella blinked slowly. "Tea," she said. "Mr. Bell brought it before the gala." Dante's head turned toward the house manager. Mr. Bell bolted. He made it 3 steps before one of Dante's guards blocked the corridor, but the chaos gave Vanessa exactly what she wanted. "This is because of her," she shouted, pointing at Eliana. "She brings debt collectors, false accusations, and now threats into your home. Hand her over before your mother pays for your little performance." The words sliced through Eliana's chest. For 1 second she almost believed them. Maybe if she had never come tonight, Isabella would be safe. Maybe if Dante had never defended her, his family would not be under attack. She pulled her hand from his. "They asked for me," she said, voice shaking but clear. "Let me go outside and talk to them." Dante's eyes flashed. "No, your mother is sick, and you are not a bargaining chip." Eliana's tears rose fast, but she held them back. "I have spent my whole life being the person people can afford to lose. I know what that feels like, Dante. I will not let your mother die because someone finally decided I mattered." That sentence struck him harder than any threat on the screen. His face changed, the cold mask breaking just enough for her to see the loneliness beneath it. Then Isabella swayed. Eliana caught her before Dante could move, lowering the older woman carefully into a chair while the guards rushed for the private doctor. "Her pulse is fast," Eliana said. "Keep her awake. Do not let her drink anything else." Dante knelt beside his mother, one hand on Isabella's shoulder, but his eyes stayed on Eliana with a new kind of focus. Not pity, trust. "How do you know this?" he asked. "Because hospitals teach you when no one else will," she said. "And because I saw Mr. Bell switch the teacups earlier, I thought I imagined it." Mr. Bell began shouting from the guard's grip. "She is lying!" Dante stood slowly. "Play the East Corridor footage." The main screen flickered. The hallway video appeared. Mr. Bell taking Vanessa's envelope, slipping into the servant's pantry, placing the bracelet into Eliana's locker, then exchanging Isabella's cup on a silver tray. Gasps ripped through the guests. Vanessa's face went blank. But the footage did not stop. A second clip appeared, older, time-stamped 3 years ago outside Mercy General Hospital. Rain poured over the emergency entrance. A younger Eliana, soaked in a cheap blue coat, dragged a bleeding man from a black SUV while people screamed and ran. She pressed towels to his side, shouted for help, and stayed with him until doctors arrived. Dante stared at the screen as if the floor had vanished beneath him. Eliana covered her mouth. She remembered that night only as one more emergency near the hospital, one more stranger she had helped before rushing back to Matteo. She had never known his name. The camera zoomed on the injured man's face. It was Dante Moretti. Isabella whispered, "You were the girl." Dante turned to Eliana, and all the power in the room could not hide the shock in his eyes. "You saved my life." Vanessa recovered first, her voice cold and venomous, and now she wants payment for it. Eliana flinched, but this time she did not lower her head. "I wanted nothing. That is why you never knew." Before Dante could answer, the mansion went dark. Emergency lights washed the hallway in red. A guard shouted that the west gate had been breached. Then Eliana's phone buzzed in her apron pocket with a video call from an unknown number. On the screen, Matteo sat tied to a chair in a dim warehouse, frightened but alive, while Carter Rusk leaned close to the camera and smiled. "Midnight came early, Miss Rose. Choose the mother, the brother, or the boss." The video call filled the red-lit hallway with Matteo's terrified breathing. Carter Rusk smiled into the camera like a man who had never been afraid of consequences. "Choose the mother, the brother, or the boss," he said, and behind him Matteo tried to sit taller even with his wrists tied to the chair. "Ellie, don't come," her brother pleaded. Eliana's heart broke at the sound of his voice, but she forced herself not to cry because crying had never saved anyone. Dante stepped beside her. his face colder than the emergency lights washing over the marble. "Rusk," he said, calm enough to frighten everyone listening. "You just signed your own ending." Rusk laughed. "No, Moretti. You did that when you humiliated Vanessa's family in front of half the city. Her father wants his shipping routes back. Mr. Bell wants his money. I want the girl. Midnight was always the deadline." Vanessa lifted her chin from the shadows, her beauty twisted by panic and pride. "Dante, this can still be fixed. Give her to them, sign the alliance, and your mother gets the antidote." Eliana turned slowly. "You poisoned Mrs. Moretti because he protected me?" Vanessa's eyes flashed. "He embarrassed me because of you." For the first time, Eliana saw the truth clearly. Vanessa did not hate her because she was poor, or plus-size, or a maid. She hated her because Dante had looked past all of that and seen a person worth choosing. Dante looked at his doctor, who was kneeling beside Isabella with a medical case. "How long?" The doctor's voice was tense. "Less than 40 minutes before the symptoms become critical. I need to know exactly what was used." Rusk held up a small vial on the screen. "Come alone, Miss Rose. The antidote comes with you. Bring Dante and your brother disappears." Eliana felt Dante's hand brush near hers, not grabbing, not commanding, just there. "No," he said softly. "We do this my way." She looked at him through tears she refused to release. "Your way gets people killed if I stand behind you and do nothing." Then she faced the phone. "I'll come." Dante's eyes hardened. "Eliana." "You said trust is earned," she whispered. "Trust me too." The words stopped him. In that silence, she reached into the pocket of his jacket, still around her shoulders, and pulled out the tiny recorder his guard had slipped there earlier with the security files. Dante noticed at once, and something almost like pride moved through his eyes. Eliana turned the phone so Rusk could see only her face. "Where?" "Pier 38. 10 minutes." The call ended. Vanessa exhaled like she had won, but Eliana stepped toward her. The whole hallway watched the maid with the wine-stained apron and the Mafia Boss's jacket stand taller than the woman who had tried to bury her. "You called me invisible," Eliana said. "That was your mistake. Invisible people hear everything." Dante's mouth barely moved. "Luca." His captain nodded and vanished into the dark hall with a team. Eliana had not agreed to walk into danger alone. She had agreed to become the bait while Dante's people traced the call, pulled the hospital cameras, and moved around Pier 38 from 3 sides. The plan unfolded fast. Isabella was carried to the private medical room. The doctor prepared emergency treatment. The police officers who had come to arrest Eliana now stood silent, realizing they had been used. Dante took Eliana aside near the grand staircase where the chandeliers were dim and the mansion sounded like a storm waiting to break. "I will not lose you," he said. Eliana's breath caught. "You don't even know me. I know you ran toward my mother when everyone else argued. I know you saved my life and asked for nothing. I know you are scared and still choosing courage." His voice dropped. "That is enough to start." At Pier 38, fog rolled over the docks and the Hudson glittered black beyond the warehouses. Eliana walked forward alone under the yellow security lights, Dante's jacket still around her shoulders, a small microphone hidden beneath the lapel. Rusk dragged Matteo into view while 2 men stood near a metal table holding the antidote. Vanessa's father, Richard Vale, appeared from the warehouse office in a grey coat, his expression smooth and empty. "A maid almost destroyed a family empire," he said. "Remarkable." Eliana lifted her chin. "No, cruel people destroyed it by thinking kindness was weakness." Rusk stepped close and reached for her arm. Before he touched her, Dante's voice cut through the fog from every speaker on the pier. "Take one more step, and the whole city hears what you confessed." Floodlights exploded on. Screens mounted across the warehouse flashed the live recording. Vanessa naming the poison, Rusk demanding the trade, Richard Vale admitting the alliance motive. Men in suits froze as sirens wailed closer. Rusk cursed and grabbed Matteo, but Eliana moved first. She slammed her heel into his foot, shoved the chair sideways, and pulled her brother down just as Dante's team rushed in. A sharp shot cracked into the air from the warehouse balcony. Dante stepped in front of Eliana on instinct, his body taking the impact against his shoulder as he shielded her and Matteo behind him. Eliana screamed his name, catching him before he fell fully to one knee. Blood darkened his suit, but his eyes stayed locked on hers. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She pressed her hand to his wound, shaking with fury and fear. "You were shot, and you're asking me that?" Vanessa stumbled from the office, cornered and crying now. "Dante, please, I can explain." Dante rose with Eliana's help, injured but unbroken, and faced the gathered police, criminals, and traitors. His voice carried over the sirens, low and final. "No more explanations. Tonight, everyone learns what happens when they mistake my wife for someone disposable." The sirens swallowed Pier 38 as Dante stood wounded but unshaken, one hand pressed to his shoulder and the other still shielding Eliana and Matteo like his body had become a wall built only for them. Police rushed the warehouse. Richard Vale tried to walk away with the cold confidence of a man who had bought his way out of consequences for decades, but the recordings were already playing on every screen. His own voice named the poisoned tea, the fake theft, and the plan to trade Eliana like she was nothing. Vanessa fell silent when officers took her phone and found the messages to Mr. Bell. Carter Rusk fought until Luca forced him to the ground, but Eliana did not look at him. She was kneeling beside Matteo, cutting the ties from his wrists with shaking hands while whispering, "You're safe. I've got you." Matteo clung to her, then looked past her at Dante. "You came for us," he said. Dante's face softened through the pain. "Your sister did first." That answer broke something open in Eliana's chest. No one had ever given her courage back to her in front of people. No one had ever made her the reason someone survived instead of the burden someone carried. Luca recovered the vial from the metal table, and within minutes it was racing through New York in a black SUV with a police escort. Dante refused the ambulance until Eliana and Matteo were inside another car under guard. "You are bleeding." Eliana said, anger and fear mixing in her voice. "And you are still giving orders like this is a business meeting." Dante looked down at her hand, gripping his sleeve. "If I stop giving orders, you will notice I am afraid." She froze. The most feared Mafia boss in New York had said it so quietly only she could hear. Afraid of what? His eyes held hers in the flashing red and blue lights. Being too late. Back at the Moretti mansion, dawn was beginning to grey the sky behind the tall windows. Isabella lay in the private medical room, weak but breathing easier after the doctor administered the antidote. When Eliana entered, still wearing Dante's jacket over her ruined uniform, Isabella reached for her hand. "You saved this family twice," she whispered. "Do not let anyone call you just the maid again." Eliana's eyes filled. For years she had apologized for taking up space in hallways, in uniforms, in rooms where people measured worth by size, money, and beauty. But standing there with Matteo safe, Isabella alive, and Dante watching her like she was not something to hide but someone to honor, she felt the old shame loosen its grip. Later that morning, the same ballroom where they had laughed at her was filled again, not with music, but with witnesses. Police escorted Vanessa, Richard Vale, Mr. Bell, and their men past the crystal chandeliers they had once believed protected them. Dante stood at the center with his arm bandaged beneath his black shirt, pale but powerful. Eliana tried to stay near the wall out of habit, but he turned and held out his hand, not to pull her, to invite her. The room watched as she chose to walk forward. Dante faced every remaining guest, employee, and ally. "Last night, I called Eliana Rose my wife to protect her from wolves in silk," he said. A murmur moved through the room, but he continued. "This morning, I am telling the truth that matters more. She is not valuable because I chose her. I chose her because she was valuable before any of us were brave enough to say it." Eliana looked at him, stunned. Dante lowered himself carefully to one knee despite the wound in his shoulder. He took the wine-stained handkerchief from his pocket, the one he had given her when everyone laughed, now folded around a simple diamond ring. "I will not trap you with my power," he said. "I will not ask you to shrink, change, or become easier for cruel people to accept. But if one day you want my name for real, I will spend the rest of my life proving I know how to honor yours." The room disappeared around her. Eliana saw only the man who had been feared by enemies, betrayed by allies, and still learned to be gentle with her first. She touched his face, careful near the bruise on his jaw, and smiled through tears. "Ask me when I am not wearing a ruined apron." For the first time all night, Dante Moretti laughed softly. 3 months later, Eliana walked into the Moretti Foundation wing at Mercy General, not as the Maid people mocked, but as the woman who helped fund care for families who could not afford to be forgotten. Matteo was healing. Isabella called her daughter in every way that mattered. And Dante, still dangerous to anyone who threatened his world, became gentle whenever Eliana entered the room. She never had to become smaller to be loved. He never had to remain cold to stay powerful. They found in each other what the world had tried to steal: dignity, safety, and home. So tell me, would you have trusted Dante after that first shocking claim, or would you have run from the Mafia Boss who called a mocked maid his wife? Subscribe for more emotional Mafia Boss stories where the woman everyone underestimates becomes the one no one can replace.